Hello to everyone. I'm live again with Architect of the Week, another episode, and today I have with me a very special guest. Before I proceed, let me tell you what is Architect of the Week and who is there with me today. Architect Designer of the Week are video episodes that hosts a person of substance from the architecture, interior design, or product design in a very informal and up close interaction. This week, our guest is architect Rahul Kadri. Rahul Kadri is the partner and principal architect at I Am Kadri Architects, a 62-year-old firm started by his father, I Am Kadri, in the year 1958. As an architect, Senior Kadri has left his imprint on several landmark buildings in the cities of India, the Middle East, Hong Kong, Tajikistan, and many other places. One creation of senior architect Kadri even earned him an entry into the Guinness Book of World Records for the world's highest stained glass mural, 135 feet tall at the Ramada Hotel, Dubai. Architect Kadri, Rahul Kadri, who is with me right now, he has spent most of his formative years amidst lush landscape exploring the forest of the Kumang Himalayas while studying at Sherwood College in Nainital. His early relationship with nature has infused within him a deep passion to create buildings and spaces which are in harmony with its natural context. He completed his diploma in architecture from the Academy of Architecture, Mumbai, and I believe it is there where he met Shimul. We'll come to know from the conversation that will happen now, and went on to pursue his master degree in urban planning from the University of Michigan. He assumed directorship of Kadri Consultants Private Limited in 1995 and since then has designed townships for the Tatas, Jindals, Reliance, hotels and resorts for Taj and Club Mahindra, college campuses for Symbiosis, and the Supreme Court of India, and many more. Apart from his engagement with architecture, architect Kadri is very actively involved in proposals for the effective development of open spaces in Mumbai, and we have been seeing him voicing his opinion about the city and how living should be there in a city like Mumbai. So join me, all of you, join me to welcome architect Rahul Kadri as Surfaces Reporter's Architect of the Week. Hello, architect Rahul Kadri. How are you?
I'm good, Vertica. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here in this show.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much
looking forward.
for being our guest today. And I would like to start with knowing about yourself from you. We know a lot about you, but if I want to ask you about your journey as an architect, in short, what would you say?
My journey as an architect. I would say my journey as an architect started when I was quite young, when when my father would take us out and show us some of his buildings, um, and so that that and it was always instilled in me that I was going to be an architect. Um, But it was only when I joined architecture first year at the Academy of Architecture, I really fell in love with it. Our teachers, some of our teachers were excellent, and they really instilled in us a love for architecture. And I remember when we graduated, it was like people pay us to do this. I mean, we just love this. I mean, this is just so much fun to do. There's such joy doing it. It didn't seem right that we were being paid to do this. So I think that's a fault that architects have. um, and so then I started, I did my traineeship with PK Das and Associates. Um, then after that, I worked with Ratan Batli Boy for some time. Then I went abroad. And when I came back, I joined my father. That was in 89. And we worked together side by side for almost 12 years, and me helping him for 12 years. Still, I think he was about 75, and then I slowly started to take over the practice and change things a little bit because computers had come in, etc. Fortunately, my thinking was kind of quite similar to my father's um, in many ways. The love for nature was the same, and the concern for usable spaces and places, the emphasis on plans and making sure that the plans work well, that was something we shared. Um, However, my hand is a little lighter than his, and so there were differences in the aesthetics of the buildings later on, which I came to explore. Um, and I was more concerned with um, overall place and how it integrates with nature. And that's a little different from the image making architecture, which he was known for, where the buildings were very bold. My buildings are not bold. My buildings integrate. So they're they're a little more subtle than his. So they're difficult to photograph. They're difficult to express because it's not one uh, uh, object. It's a series of places. Um, so that has been growing uh, over time. Of course, my relationship with Shimul, our practices complementing each other, some discussions we could have. So a lot of kind of similarities there as well. Um, Differences in scale of the work, but similarities in the overall thinking is there. Um, yeah, I said I think it was an early decision we made not to work together, which is good, I feel, because I keep saying, I should be a boss at least in one place. In my office, I get to be a boss. If she was there in the office also, then, I would not get to play this role. And designers are a little quirky, only one designer can be there. Even with my father, we would have some pretty serious fights on designs. So, uh, yeah, we kind of tend to feel that we are right in what we do. So it would have been very hard for both of us to design. Then one would have had to take a subsidiary role or management. So one become the designer, one become the manager, kind of thing. It's very difficult for two designers to work. I think. I don't know. So anyway, uh, and the journey has had lots of ups and downs. Um, so there was a lot of work in the beginning when I joined my dad. It was quite a low because most of his clients kind of retired. His corporate clients, the people he knew, weren't there. So then we had to build the practice up again. So from the 90s onwards, so that decade, the last decade was fairly hard because it was kind of a flux between him and me. So then I had to, 2000 onwards, I started building my own clients, competing, etc. He wouldn't allow us to compete because he's saying, we're an established firm, why should we compete? So we had to compete behind his back. Luckily, computers were there and he didn't know what we were doing with the computers. So we could compete behind his back. And then when we won the competition, luckily we won the first three competitions we entered. We won. So then after winning, we went to him and said, this is what we have done. We won. So those clients have become my steady clients now. So Symbiosis, for which we've done almost 2 million square feet of work now since then in the last 2 decades. Club Mahindra, for which we've been doing a lot of work and continue to do a lot of work, and the Sona Group institution. So these three have become kind of our main clients now. That's how things have started, and the journey.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can. You can ask me some more questions.
Yes, we can continue this discussion with this. Now, tell me something. See, there are not many firms with the next generation architects, like the way that you have stepped in with your father, right? So, I would like to know what are the kind of learnings that you started with because your father, because of your exposure. to architecture, to the kind of the work that your father was already doing. Okay, so what were the kind of the learnings that you already had, and what were the changes? Like you said that okay, the last decade with your father, when the transformation was probably happening, that was a quite kind of eventful sort of a thing. So I'm sure you had put in some kind of things which were your ideas, okay, together with what you have learned from your father.
Yeah.
So how was that?
Yeah. So it was a very established firm, and there were quite a few. There was a lot of knowledge in the company about how buildings work, what's possible, what's not possible, systems of working. Um, so, and there were very senior people working in the company who were very good architects. So the entire studio, there were 6 or 7 architects who were very very good at their work, along with my dad. Um, so having them as seniors really helped mentorship. They would immediately see a plan and see what works, what doesn't work, and even understand very quickly what clients needed and wanted. Um, so those were all the learnings with my working with my dad. What I brought is, it's like you your programming happens in college. The books you read, etc. They and you want to implement that. So I had read a lot of Christopher Alexander's work and Charles Moore's work, and it was Christopher Alexander's The Pattern Language, that particular book, which influenced me a lot. And then I went and worked for him in the US. Um, I built with him. I was building a house with him. Then I was designing furniture with him. So I learned a lot from him, and his thoughts and about what really matters in architecture, what gives us true joy, defining archetypes, defining patterns of space, patterns of place. Um, that influenced me tremendously, and I felt what he was writing made a lot of sense. So he came to architecture from mathematics and physics. So he looked at space very differently, and he defined space very differently. So that is something I brought to the practice. Um, Archetypes, place making. What makes a place special. Um, and then Charles Moore's work also influenced me. I read a lot about him, about our basic needs of wanting to live in a forest, our basic needs of needing to belong. Um, in our practice now, the social aspect of architecture plays a very great role. The environmental was always there in my dad's time, but the social aspect plays a very, very great role in our work now, which is something we added. I feel my dad work is very iconic. It's kind of heroic. Um, my work is more democratic. It's more about people connecting, people meeting,
Mm.
etc. So that's
How believe.
that's the fundamental difference, I would see. So we continued the love for nature, building in gardens, etc. But we added this social aspect, and we
Mm.
took away we changed the aesthetic to be more contextual to the place. Uh, uh, yeah, and contemporize things a little bit. We kind of felt that try to find what is the essence of proportion and work with that. We took away from the building rather than wanted to add to the building.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So I'm sure the addition has all really worked very well for your firm, and your firm is really doing good in so many different projects. Talking about you or thinking about your name always reminds me of of a sensitive architect who is very very concerned about the city as well. right? About how people are living and how things should change, how reforms should be done, and how architects can take part in those reforms along with the common people. This always comes to my mind. So I wanted to talk to you about, you have been voicing a lot of things about Mumbai, the city you live, right? And the things that are happening. So I want to talk to you about city, the conditions, led by the climate change, the condition led by so much of rain, what the Indian cities are facing today. So starting with one question about the city. So it is said that I've actually heard you in one of the interviews saying that the quality of a city can be determined by the way it treats its pedestrians, the common people, how they walk, how the pedestrians move in the city. So, what are your ideas and what are the shifts that cities need to do to empower the pedestrian?
Yeah. So life in a city really, a city is only about its streets, right? Our house is our house. So that's a private realm. The realm in which we interact is the street. Um, and that's when you enjoy a city is when you're walking. You don't enjoy it in a car, right? Okay, you may some great views may be there, but it's really when you're walking. So whether you're walking on Kulaba Causeway or Bandra Link Road shopping or some arcade, it's you enjoy the city when you're walking. So that's one part of it. When do you enjoy a city? When do you interact with a city as a citizen? The other part is in a city you need to move because it's very big. Now, so how comfortable do we make this movement that I'm going from my house, my work, or I'm going to school, I have to go to the hospital, I go to recreation. So rather than only looking at the two ends, that from my house to my work, my house may be beautiful and nice, and my workplace may be nice, and I enjoy things there. But this in between space also, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with that time that we spend on the journey? So, looking at comfort for the maximum number of people, you see, you need the most efficient way and a way that takes the least amount of space. So, any city that is modeled on transportation, which is rail based, so underground rail based, bus based, and walking based, will be um, successful because the space is always limited, right? You don't have enough street space. There's a fixed amount of space. How do you make best use of that space? So you make best use of that space by firstly creating space by putting as that major transportation underground. If you can achieve that, the maximum number of people, the distances are going underground, that makes a huge, huge difference to the life on the surface of the city. Um, and then when from that underground, when you come up, you should come up close enough, and then the footpath should be really wide and nice with beautiful trees, flowers, birds, etc. Nice shaded walkways, and you should have enough space to walk to your work. And we are blessed with the climate. I mean, it doesn't snow here. It's not very, very cold, etc. It doesn't get terribly hot. It does get hot. It does get humid, but not so bad. I mean, it's not a desert kind of thing. So you can use the streets at more time. Okay, monsoons are a problem. So that's a different thing. But so the most efficient and most beautiful way is to organize in this way that you can walk to work. See, anyway, 50% of the people of Bombay walk to work. 50%, right? They walk to work. So a city that respects numbers, that respects, okay, what is the majority doing? And designs for the majority and doesn't design for the minority. Right now, All our governments, everybody designs for the minority. We design for the car. In Mumbai, only 8 to 10% of the people use the car. So why this tremendous focus on those 10%? In a democracy, or as designers, we should look for the maximum benefit we can have for the maximum number of people. The only way to do that is um, designing for space and for using metros, using buses, and using footpaths. So Japan has done this in an amazing way. They, in the last decade, have halved their road space and made their pedestrian space 4 times. So it's such a pleasure to walk over there and so easy to get from place to place. Of course, they put in an underground network of uh, metros, which is remarkable. So those are the things, that's where we need to invest in the underground, and then the overground just be pedestrianized. It's just beautiful. I mean, it must be so beautiful. Just to achieve that beauty, we should do it. I mean, why should commuting be such a problem the way it is today? It doesn't have to be. But it will be. If we focus on
Yes,
cars only,
commuting.
it will be a problem.
Hmm. So, two major takeaways that we just got right now. One is about getting the maximum, the major transportation underground so that pedestrians can be empowered in the city. They should get space. If there's no space, nothing can be done. Next is about designing so that maximum people can be impacted with that kind of a change. It's very important. As you're talking about Japan, so Japan is one place where which is millions of underground tanks where extra water gets stored because they also have heavy rain and all that. Thinking about Mumbai and cities like Chennai and all that, we have come to know that with climate change, intensity of rain is only going to go higher and higher year after year. So, what are the reforms you suggest to governments and bureaucrats to plan for tackling, heavy rain that cities are going to face more and more in the time to come? So, you are not going to have tea, you told me, so I'm going to
Yeah,
have it alone. Okay, having tea.
good.
You
Um,
said no to tea.
yeah, so with climate change, the intensity of rainfall at any given time is going to go up, which is what we've been seeing. Um, so yes, Japan has huge underground tanks and huge capacity that they build. So I think there are three things we need to do. One is um, design our surfaces that percolation can happen. We're concretizing, asphalting too much. Um, so everywhere, as far as possible, slow the path of water so that percolation can happen. Um, that's one. The second is we need to change our standards for the stormwater drains. Our stormwater drains are designed for much lower intensity rainfall. So we're going to have to kind of redo our entire drainage network, which was done by the British. Uh, that's the second. And the third is, yes, holding ponds is something we can have. Um, so either we can have them underground or overground. So we need to see which were the holding grounds that we already have and don't lose those to begin with. So that is why it's so important to preserve the mangroves. The mangroves, the salt pan lands, all these lands, these are all holding ponds. Um, so what happened in the earlier floods also was when, because the mangroves, etc., in Bandra and Mahim had all been cut and the mouth of the Mithi River had been narrowed, that's when we had a problem. So the 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 environment which is there now, preserve that. Don't concretize further. don't cut the mangroves, all the holding ponds, keep and increase the size of the drains. I think if we just do that much, it'll help a lot.
Absolutely. So, as things keep on happening, governments and bureaucrats and all come up with different kind of suggestions and policies, but without the involvement of people who are caring for the city and who feel accountable for the cities and their voices coming in, nothing happens. Right? You are one voice. I know you have been voicing for different kind of things. So, what are your thoughts about how people can really come together for building their cities and how they can be instrumental in shaping their cities?
Um, See, right now there's no mechanism in the government right now or in our democracy right now that allows for citizen participation. So what we need is really more democracy. We don't have democracy really because we don't really have any say in the budgets. Citizens don't have a say in the budget. It is people sitting, so it's the commissioner, the BMC, who initiates projects. And so, like in almost now more than I think 1500 cities in the world, they've instituted a system where at least 25% of the budget is from initiatives from citizens. And there are some cities in the world where the entire budget is decided by the citizens. So they have a 5 year budget and they have a 3 year and a 1 year, and the citizens decide where the money is to be spent. Now, for example, I know in my area what is needed, what is lacking. Someone sitting somewhere else 10 kilometers away will not know. No matter how brilliant they are, they will not know. So if the so there needs to be a system where the you know people who know what is needed, they know which projects have to be done, and they can prioritize based on what they know in the neighborhood so that money is spent correctly. The main thing is that we should not waste money. We're not very rich as a country, so we cannot waste. So whatever we do should be what is important to the citizens and what is prioritized by the citizens, right? Um, so having a participatory method of making our budgets for the year is important. It's like very often you see, some divider being removed and new divider being put, or some railing being made somewhere. So you be a citizen, you wonder, what is it? Why are they doing this? There is no need for this. You know, very often you see these projects just to spend the money in the budget. So um, yeah, we need to build up a pressure as citizens to change the way governance happens in the city. Um, and maybe something to do with our education system also, which, um,
Hmm.
we're not allowed to speak.
We're not allowed
We're
to
not
speak.
allowed to speak in class. We're
We're
not
not
allowed
allowed
to
to
speak.
speak
You
in
just sit down and
class. We're
listen.
not allowed to speak. You just sit down and listen.
So, so from
So,
the beginning,
so from the
we don't
beginning,
raise our
we
voice. We don't demand
don't
change.
demand change.
We're not used
We're
to
not used to
asking
asking
for what we want or
for
for
what we want.
challenging the status quo. We are told, listen to your elders, do this, do this, do this, do this. You don't know anything, you don't have experience. Uh, so right from a young age, we are told to keep quiet.
Keep quiet.
So most people keep
So most
quiet.
people keep
Nobody
quiet.
says anything.
Nobody says anything.
But
Even if they see
luckily in
But
my
some
luckily,
divider
my
coming
family,
in,
family,
uh,
mhm,
uh,
yeah, all of a sudden,
yeah,
if some budget is spent just for the sake of spending, just to show some kind of spending and all that,
yeah,
so people just see it and they just pass by. I think questioning is very important. Raising the voice or at least asking why is very, very crucial.
yeah.
Yeah,
That is important,
So
very
but
important.
yeah,
But yeah,
I'm glad, like a person like you, actually, you are voicing about a lot of things. You have a voice, and you talk about things, and that's great, wonderful. So coming to the
yeah, I
next
feel that
point.
yeah, I
I,
feel that
Yes,
that
continue, please.
there, there comes a time when, you know, you have to start becoming a leader. You have to say, now is my time. Now
Hmm.
my generation is in charge. We are the adults now. We're not kids
Hmm.
anymore. We are
Right.
adults. So we have to, if we don't change the country, nobody will.
Nobody
So
will.
that responsibility we have to take, that we have to say, okay, no, we will not keep quiet. We will
Hmm.
make a noise. We will ask. We will
Hmm.
try our best because this is our time. We
Hmm.
have to lead now.
Hmm. So someone is saying, Gert Vadir is saying, amazing. I hope this continues to happen regularly. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So let's also take your attention to the other problem in the cities, slums, right? We see redevelopment and all these things of slums and then turning into another vertical slums, right, which are more unhealthy, so difficult to even think of. At least they were in the ground earlier, they they were probably going out and breathing fresh air or something. Now it's from the vertical kind of things, it's very difficult even to come down, and many people spend their lives there, somewhere up, much away from the ground, much away from health, sanitation, hygiene, and all that. What is your idea? What do you think? What are the things you voice about slums and redevelopment
See,
of slums?
see, see. Let's not start with slums. Let's start from the beginning.
Hmm.
When did disease, when did disease and health problems really start for mankind? They
Hmm.
started when we stopped becoming hunter gatherers. When we were hunter gatherers, we moved from place to place, and wherever we went, it was clean, right?
Hmm.
When we started sitting in one place, that is when the concept of sewage started. Sewage didn't exist before that, till we didn't settle.
Just
So,
moving from one
and
place to
when,
another.
yeah, so when we settled, that is
Hmm.
when pollution came into being. Till then, there was no pollution. So the first
so
village, these certain diseases
the
came up,
diseases came up.
waterborne diseases, airborne diseases. We started being more indoors, etc. So it's come from settlement. And then from that, we have learned how to manage our toilets, how to manage ventilation, how to manage the air, etc. But it is a result of density and sitting in one place. So the question always comes is that how dense can a city be? Is there a point where it cannot be dense anymore? Because is it something that we can just continuously do, like become denser and denser and denser and nothing will happen? So the trend is that, yeah, public health is an issue. We need to learn how to deal with it, but there should also be a limit to density. Because, so as you rightly said, the problem with the SRA concept, the slum rehab authority, the schemes, SRA, is that um, it's the only way right now a slum can be improved. Right? There is no other way. SRA is the only way. And the way is that you have to go to a builder. The development rights for that land are only given to a builder. It's not given to the residents. Only given to the builder. And so what does the builder do? See, already a slum is fairly dense. So if you take the density of the average household in Mumbai, it is about 20,000 people per square kilometer. That is the average density of the city. which is already quite high. It should be about 10,000. For example, Paris, UK, etc. are 6,500. Right? So we are 22 already. And when you take a slum is already about 50,000. So it's denser than the average. Now, you can take this up to 100,000 because in places like the Kalba Devi, etc., where the light and ventilation is not so good already, and people want to move out of those places, there it's 1 lakh people per square kilometer. So when you already have a slum which is 50,000 square feet and a developer comes in, what does the developer do? The developer has to create land to build, to sell, right? And then give free housing to the people who were staying in the slum. So to do that, he takes 75% of the land, typically, for the sale flats. So where people were spread, they were 50,000 square feet. Now they are in 1/4 the area. So suddenly your density now is um, 2 lakh people per square kilometer, right? So that density is just not sustainable. It is too dense. So what happens is that
Too
you
dense.
then put them
So what
vertically,
happens is that
and buildings are very, very close because 2 lakh square feet, 2 lakh
Narrow.
people per square kilometer you have to accommodate over here. And typically in a slum, you don't only have two or three people staying in the tenement. So firstly, the tenement is very small. It's only 350
small.
square feet,
It's only
right?
350 square feet,
So,
right? So,
so the number of
so the
houses you have is
Mm.
tremendous because they're all small. Um, so um, this density is the problem. So we have to find a solution which doesn't increase the density,
Mm.
right? So what are the solutions for that? Um, so there's only two ways that can be done, um, and they involve. See, most people living in slums in Bombay are not so badly off, right? Even a rent in a slum is 5,000 rupees a month for a 10 feet by 10 feet space. Um, so what I feel is that the development rights, instead of being given to a developer, should actually be given to the community itself. People living in a slum, they form an organization. They team up with an NGO who will help them with the design process, help them with everything. So the land rights be given to them directly. They take a 30-year loan, which can pay for at least 75% of the house which they need to build, and only 25%. So the amount of land that they use for sale then should be not more than 10 or 15% of the land. So 85% they should still live on. So that way, in 7 or 8 story buildings with lots of open space, you can manage. Because so you can increase the open space and go a little high. Um, so this is only possible if this is not a developer-led model. It has to be a community-led model. So there are two ways then. Either they sell that 15% land, get some money, um, and even in that land, it should only be similar kind of houses. It should not be fancy apartments. It should be, again, for similar kinds of people. So very affordable homes. So one.
Yes, I've lost your voice for last few words.
Yeah. So they can still
yeah.
build the
So
350 square
they
feet,
can still build the
or they can build less. If they don't want to sell, they build 250 square feet only. Because even in 250 square feet, what are the main problems of the person in the slum? He doesn't have a toilet, right? So he wants a toilet in the house. He wants running water. He, she, the family, they want the toilet, the running water in the house, and they want decent ventilation. So they don't, it should not be too hot. It's decent. So even if the house is like a hotel room, right, which is 250 square feet, it can work. And that much, most of them can afford to build on their own. And if they take a 30-year loan, the government gives them an incentive, gives them a cheaper loan. Very easy to do. So the only way I see it is we dealing with our problem of slums in a sustainable way is if we have community-led development. We cannot have developer-led where there's a profit motive, and that profit means that profit has to mean that we're going to get squeezed in the land. It cannot happen without that. So there's a fundamental flaw in the way slum development happen. And the other thing is that we've had SRA now for 25 years, and we've hardly met even 2% of the target that we need 1 million slums to be rehabilitated. We've hardly done, I don't know, it's 2.5% of that number is actually been dealt with. So it's turning out that it's not even very efficient in how it works, or very effective in how it works. So we have to rethink this whole thing if we want to solve the problem. If you're saying, "Acha, theek hai, रहने दो, vote bank hai," then it's different. But if you want to solve the problem, it needs to be changed completely. It won't work the way it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, if the future has to be better and really, health of people and community is important, then it should be a community-led model, not a profit-led or a developer-led model, which has not been working so far. So, since it has not been working since all these years, there is no, we can easily say that it will not be definitely not be working in
So you
future as
can
well.
let that you can let the development also remain. If some people
Hmm.
want that, do that, but give them a choice. Right now, there's no
Right.
choice. So
Hmm.
add two more models to it. It's saying, okay, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. You choose what you want. So just
Right.
give more choice. Yeah.
Right. So coming to another issue which most of the countries faced this time and came to know that that's about the healthcare facilities. You have been working on a lot of healthcare projects. So how can cities get prepared with adequate healthcare facilities and be ready for the coming time? What COVID has already taught us in all these a few months of time, we've come to know how the situation is. So, what are your ideas about having adequate healthcare facilities and good healthcare facilities? And also share with us what are your ideas about what kind of changes in architecture should be done for the upcoming facilities in healthcare? And I
Yeah.
would also like to, after you answer this one, I would also like to know about one very interesting project. I think IMK Architects has been selected as a finalist in the public building exterior category, the Symbiosis project, right? So
Yeah.
right after
Yeah.
this, I would
Yeah.
like to know about this interesting project as well. Yes.
Okay, sure. So, see, healthcare, what's happened in healthcare in the last 20 years, we our over dependence on air conditioning has happened. Um, so all our hospitals are air conditioned completely, which has led, and we know about this, to the sick building syndrome. We know that infections spread within a hospital. We've known this for a while, that in an ICU you can get infected with another patient next to you. That infection can come to you. So in the air conditioning system, um, infections can spread. So
Yes.
the main difference I see is that, see, if you're designing holistically and you're designing in a biophilic way with nature, um, and your architecture is passive, energy passive, then if you design with cross ventilation, if you design with daylight, just a simple thing, if you do that well, that helps a hospital as well, right? That you are that that there is fresh air. See, even to heal, what do we really need? Fundamentally,
fundamentally
breath,
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 and the quality
and the
of air and
quality.
breath is important in your healing. So, breath is important. Um, your eyes, what your eyes see, the comfort of light, right? Are you in a tube light space or are you in natural light? Makes such a difference. Is it a warm glow? Um, and comfort. Is there a gentle breeze, kind of cross ventilation in the ward, etc.? So these are the fundamentals. So if you take care of the fundamentals and don't short circuit them by having everything in artificial terms, then you begin to solve the problem. So going back to first principles really matters in healthcare design. So not making buildings which are
Not
very
making
deep,
buildings which are very
which
deep,
are narrower,
which
12
are
meters wide.
narrow.
So there's cross ventilation, there's daylight, etc. That's important as a trend. The system anyway is broken, which but we need to fix the. That's not an architecture part, but our healthcare system in Maharashtra, in the country, is broken really because we don't have primary healthcare, then secondary, then tertiary. We don't have enough GPs who we can trust. Um, that entire network is kind of broken. In see what Delhi is doing as a government. In every neighborhood, they're having a clinic that if anybody is sick, they can go to the clinic, they can get tested, they can get. So those are the initiatives we actually need. So from a primary level till the tertiary, that network has to be there, which is kind of broken in Bombay. It doesn't exist in Bombay. So that's on the systemic level. But on the architectural level, just go back to the basics. Yeah.
So, having a system where there is a network of the primary, secondary, and the tertiary facilities so that people know for what they can go where and how they can, climb up to as per the requirement. As well as, in architecture, I think HVAC system is one area which needs extreme care and in implementation. As COVID has taught us how infections get spread and how sick syndrome, the words that you have used, percolates into a building which is called a hospital where people go for cure, but definitely many of them get infections and come back. So coming back, staying in the healthcare segment, I would like to know one more thing, which is very interesting. As going through it, friends, recently IMT Architects has been selected as a finalist in the Public Building Exterior category at the 2021 Surface Design Awards, London, for using compressed earth brick, an alternative low-cost, carbon-neutral building material in a very interesting project in Symbiosis University Hospital and Research Center. So I would like to know about this project. I would like to know where you have used this material. Was it limited to the building exterior, interior? How you have come, thinking about this, using this material, and how was it overall?
Um, Actually, this story starts in 2003, um, when we did one of the competitions that I told you about behind my father's back. So we entered a competition for symbiosis. There were 70 architects
Hmm.
competing for a 230-acre campus. And uh, so the solutions we went with were very earth-based, earth-friendly, and very, very green. And one of the things over there was to use the compressed earth block. So it was in 2003 that we experimented with the soil, and we developed this brick on the site. It took us about 4 months to experiment to get the correct brick. And then since then, we've been using this brick in all the buildings in the campus over there. One of the reasons I feel we won the competition is that um, We were the only architects, so we were given a lot of land, and there were two main passes of land. It was a 230-acre campus, but there were two main passes. One was a 60-acre plateau on top, and the other was a 50-acre land at the base of the hill. We were the only architects who only used the 60-acre plateau, and we said we don't need the 50 acre below, because we felt that the energy that and the social needs of the building people interacting means that there has to be a certain density. All the other architects use both plots of land. So I think I joke with my team. I said that's the only thing that the client says to bachayega hamara land. So let him get the project. But so that was one of the things. And then
Mm.
5 years later,
5 years later,
that plot of land
that
which we
plot of land
saved,
which we
they
saved,
came to
Mm.
us
they
to
came
design
to
a
us
medical
to
college
design a
campus
medical
in that 50 acres land which we had saved down. There also, they had already been working for almost a year with an architect from Delhi, and they were finding that, no, he's just coming out with a corporate hospital design, just not satisfied. They finally came to us and said, Rahul, give it a shot, just see. And I could see the smiles on their faces when we presented that,
that
you know, that why didn't we
that
ask him
why did
before,
we ask him before
to come and design for
to
us,
come
because
and
he knows
design for us, because he
exactly
knows
what we
exactly
want.
what we want.
Mm.
So it really was a
So it really was a
continuation of
continuation of
a lot of the
a lot
thoughts
of
and
the thoughts
ideas which we'd already established for them since then.
since then.
And so this brick was a part of it. But now for us, it was okay, we've already used this brick in many ways in the campus on top. By then, almost 1 million square feet we had already built. So, what can we do beyond this? So, that brainstorming of how we can be more innovative. So, the material was fixed. We knew we wanted to use this for the continuity of the project, but we wanted to use it in a new way. So that was the brainstorming of how can we, what kind of play
What
of
kind of
light can we
play of
have?
light can we have?
How can we use angles in the bricks? So there was a lot of thinking on that. And
Mm.
luckily, the contractor who had developed the brick for us, he did a lot of experimentation with us again in kind of how to make these bricks sing, and that they should reflect the light in various ways, and use them in an angular way. So it was a kind of a new way to use bricks in angles, which we thought will really add to the facade, being a very interesting facade. So that's how it came
Good.
about.
So with this story, I've learned two things, like, how, as an architect, how you have saved that kind of space for your client, and how much big it was for the client to get to know that you are saying, okay, we need only this much and this is not required, right? That actually was the starting point. And later on, as you have used this material and innovating with this material and using it further to develop, or get the benefits of this on the other part of the project, is a very interesting thing that you have done in the project. And we at Surfaces Reporter, we are going to cover this on our website, so you people will be seeing the project there. Also, a message to the brands and building material people: see how the vendor actually partnered to innovate, to help in the innovation. That's very much required. That partnership is required in order to make projects really, really good and innovative, successful. So, with this, I'm moving to the next very, very important and interesting question, and that is about our very dear Shimul Zaveri Kadri. So, Shimul is the wife of architect Rahul Kadri. You will find it very interesting to know that there are two firms. Shimul is running her own firm, while Rahul Kadri is running his own firm, and they are husband and wife. So, definitely, like everybody, I would also like to know, how is it like having two firms at in one home? And during lockdown, I have seen you really being very active. Was it because Shimul was around?
No, no, no. uh, no, so yes, in a sense.
in a sense.
Um, so, we have very different ways of working, Shimal and me. Over the years, tend to delegate a lot. And she's still a comparatively, fairly hands-on. So I, my office starts at 9 in the morning. By 10 o'clock, everything is delegated. It's done. Then I don't have much to do till the teams don't come back to me. Whereas she sits with each team. I don't sit with each team. I only sit with the leaders, and they sit with the teams and get things done. So I deal with the concepts and the issues, uh, and then how things have to happen is done by the teams. I don't get to how, but I see her sitting and solving each problem, each thing with each team. How is to be done? I said, "Bapre, she was very hard, yeah." So I should also do something. I should not just sit. Uh, so yeah, it has inspired me to some extent. But my concerns have always been there. But I also, the other thing that has happened is that in my office, I have another boss. I have many bosses in my office, by the way. So one boss is Preeti Kapri, who is a brilliant architect who is presently leading our business development uh, team. So she is the one who's making me do all this now. Making sure, making sure I go out and talk, etc.
So there's
So this
someone,
is Preeti's
someone at
work.
home also, and there are many at office who are making you do things. So that's good. That's wonderful. So tell us, like, you know, it seems that you're a person who loves to work, building processes around your work and everything, right? She more gets into details and she likes to work with the details, with everything. How do you think like processes can really help architects do better or do more in less time?
Yeah. So I think this has been something I've been struggling with ever since we graduated. Um, and we were never really taught this. What is a design process? How are you supposed to design? What are the steps to designing? That was never very clear. Um, so I feel the traditional way an architecture studio works is fairly chaotic, wherein you know you get some idea what the client says that they want, then you draw it, then you go back and you discuss it, and then say नहीं नहीं ऐसे नहीं चाहिए ये चाहिए पर इसका भी सोचो ये भी करो. So it's a very iterative process and leads to a lot of redos, etc. Um, and there's no deep understanding of who you're building for and what they really need. I feel as architects, that is a question we are not taught in architecture school to probe very deeply. Um, so in our firm, we attempt to do that. We start with a very intense workshop with the clients. It's a 4-hour workshop. So we tell them, please don't give us any brief. We will develop the brief with you. So this 4-hour workshop where we have with them, we want to know all their aspirations. So supposing, so if it's a school building, and then we want the principal of the school, we want the administrators, we want the promoter, everybody to be in the same room. Whoever is the key stakeholders, we insist that they're there in the room with us. And so then we start, okay, who are you building this for? Um, so they say students. Okay, who are the students? We try and get into the depth of exactly what is the student's background, what are the ages, let's break them up into different. Then we look at each part. Okay, these are the kind of students, this is the background they come from, these are their aspirations. This is what they want. This is what their parents want. This is what you want as the teachers. So we come up with all the features in words. So we get 200 features. And then we evaluate the features with them and prioritize the features to come up with, because there's always something which is more important than what is less important. So then we say, okay, there are some features, there are 20% of the features which are going to give you 80% of the value in the building. So let us identify those. So notice, it is never about what we as the architects want. It is what it is the life of the user. How the user's life is going to be enhanced, how they are going to thrive. What do they really want? How is their life really going to improve? So whether we're designing a resort, or whether we're designing an apartment complex or a township or a hospital, this is the method to find out what is really important. First, we do that, think about that, and then we bring those features alive in the best possible. So we also know, so by then clients know and we know what is important. It is not that new ideas don't come; they come, but then we always ask them, "Acha, compared to this idea, how important is it?" So sometimes they come up with a frivolous thing, and they realize, no, it's not so important. Let it be. Also, what tends to happen in the process is that from the client's team, one person does not get to dominate the conversation, because the system is a very democratic one where everybody gets one vote. So when there's a whole system to how that works, so we're using the intelligence of the entire client's team to understand what is really needed, and not only the CEO or the person who speaks the loudest. So it's a very intelligent way of doing things. And then that same process is kind of reversed in our office, where we have a project owner, someone who owns the project, and he or she, it's mainly she's, they disseminate it to the team of what is important. But they cannot tell the architects how to do it. They only have to tell what has to be done. So then the creativity of the architecture team comes into play in finding out the solution of how to do it. So that is why I only have to sit back and say, "Acha, ye chahiye." And then they come up with the solutions. And youngsters come up with much better things than we can think about. So it becomes a very interesting process where their intelligence in the team is being used in a holistic way. They're not being told, "Acha, we know how to do it, you just do this, just draft this. Just draft it." That's not how our office works. So on both ends of the spectrum, we're using the entire intelligence of the client team, and we're using the entire intelligence of our office team to make the user's life much better. So that's the process we use. I think we have crossed over an hour.
Yes, we have. So we are going to end in just a few minutes. So what I understood is a very, very interesting and an extremely intense process to understand the user as well as the need, or the overall stakeholders, bringing in the stakeholders, the client side, those who have their voices, those who do not have but have ideas, bringing them together in an intense process. Once that process is done and filtered, and the what and then the how comes in, right? And that is
Right.
how you sit back. I think that's the point where you
Yeah.
sit back and you are able
So
to
there's the
check
what,
on the thing.
there's the what, there's the why, because the why
There's
gives the
why.
meaning and what's important, and then there's the how.
Mm.
So it's
Yes.
who is it for,
Mm.
what do they want, why do they want
Mm.
it, and how. So who, what, why.
Wonderful. I think you should name this process something.
It has a name.
Okay, what's that?
So this basically comes from a system called Scrum. It's used in the
It's
Okay.
software
used in the
world a
software
lot.
world a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
So
Mm-hmm.
we have
So
adapted
we have
it for
adapted it
architecture.
for architecture.
We've
Mm-hmm.
understood the
We've
system, we've
understood the
understood the
system, we've
Wonderful.
understood
principles.
the
Good.
principles.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
from
So it's
Scrum
from Scrum
that it's adapted, and
that it's
we've
adapted and
added
we've added
some other
some other
processes of
processes of
difference
different.
mapping, etc.,
Mhm.
to arrive at a kind of a hybrid thing, but it's mainly Scrum.
Wonderful. So, to end this, I would like to know your message for the students, especially in architecture and design. Students, what is your message for the students?
Message for students is um, twofold, probably. One is really try to find out what your clients really want,
Mm,
um, and address that. You'll be surprised some of the things they ask for, some of the things that they think are important. Um, so really pay attention to that. And second is pay attention to your community and your surroundings and see how you can improve it. Just your
mm,
building where you live, participate in your society, become a member of the committee if you can, so that you can make a difference there, help form an association in the neighborhood so that
mm,
you get a better voice in the government. As architects, you can contribute a lot to society because you
mm,
understand the built world, which most people don't understand. They don't know how these things work. They
mm,
don't know what is better. So you
mm,
are trained to think
Trained
about
to
this.
think about
So
this.
mm,
So
you are a
you
natural
are a
leader in
natural
society.
leader in society.
mm.
So take your
So
position
take your position
and
Mm,
lead.
and lead.
Don't stand back.
Don't stand back.
Step in
mm,
front
Step in
and
front
lead
and
and
lead
take
and
charge.
take charge.
mm. Wonderful message. Wonderful message. Um, as architects, you are a natural leader because you know about the built environment much more. It's been a part of your studies. You know about it. So take your position, have your voice, find it if you don't have it. And don't forget to ask questions. That's what architect Rahul Kadri has just said. So he has led by example, by the way. The way his projects are, the way that he voices about things, he is leading things by example. So with this, I would like to know, architect Rahul Kadri, what is your message for us, Surfaces Reporter magazine?
I think keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a wonderful job. You're definitely gone beyond the surface. You're not only the surface decor, there's much more depth to the magazine now, which is great. Of course, the surface is the most important thing. Intelligence is on the surface. But yeah, fantastic job. Keep doing what you're doing. All the
Thank
best.
you, and all the best to you, to all the interviews that you're doing. And I wish
Thank.
you get more and more active, and you get Shimul by your side, and she and the people in your team. My best wishes are for them too. So lots of best wishes from Surfaces Reporter magazine. With this, we end this, and very soon I'll be coming with another, very interesting architect next week in Architect Designer of the Week by Surfaces Reporter magazine.